He thought it was just a routine pipe replacement under the Walmart parking lot, but the ground beneath his feet shook, and something opened up that the city was not supposed to know about. Beneath the asphalt was a tunnel leading straight to a bank vault. Their mistake saved thousands of lives, but it also revealed a secret that someone had tried to bury forever. Subscribe and write in the comments which city you're from. The morning had that pale, weightless stillness that comes before work begins. The Walmart parking lot stretched wide and flat under a dim sky, its white lines faded to gray, and its air heavy with the scent of damp asphalt and gasoline. A few cars sat scattered across the lot, like pieces left after a long game. In the corner, near the construction barriers, a group of workers in orange vests moved slowly, stamping their boots against the cold. The sound of metal clinking, the hiss of an engine starting, and the dull grind of shovels against gravel filled the air as the day began. Sasha Morozov, the foreman, stood beside the truck, checking the fuel gauge and muttering under his breath. He was 45, compact, with shoulders shaped by years of lifting more than he should. A streak of gray cut through his beard, and his hands were cracked from constant work. For him, jobs like this were routine, a stretch of old pipe under a commercial lot that the city wanted replaced before the frost set in. He had done dozens of them. Still, the note on the blueprint, void detected, depth unverified, bothered him. It was the kind of phrase that meant more work, more risk, more delay, and fewer hours of sleep. "Ready when you are," called Igor from the cab of the excavator. He was young, barely 24, still with that anxious energy of someone who hadn't yet learned to hide his nerves. His gloves were new, his movements precise, and his eyes bright beneath the brim of his helmet. He lived for this, the machine, the power of it, the sense that his hands could move Earth like a god-shifting continents. Next to them, leaning over a stack of blueprints on the hood of a pickup, stood Marina Lebedeva. She wore her hard hat tilted slightly forward, and her glasses perched low on her nose. As the lead civil engineer, she was supposed to ensure that everything below ground matched what the plans said above. But the plans were a mess. Half the city's original schematics dated back to the 1970s, drawn on yellowed paper that had been scanned, copied, and redrawn until no one could tell what was new and what was obsolete. "There's a note here," she said, tapping the page with a pencil. "A void under section C4. It's not listed in the 2005 update." Sasha glanced over her shoulder. "Could be an old drainage channel. We've seen worse." "Could be," Marina replied quietly. "Or could be nothing." She didn't add what she was thinking, that sometimes what was written as nothing in a city's records could swallow everything above it. At 8 sharp, the Walmart manager came out to meet them, a short, impatient man in a pressed shirt and a bright yellow tie that clashed with the safety tape behind him. He waved his hands like a conductor who couldn't find the rhythm. "You'll need to keep this side open," he said. "We have trucks coming in at noon. Just get it done before the weekend. The city said you'd be finished in 2 days." Sasha nodded with that careful calm that working men use when talking to people who've never held a shovel. "We'll do our best." The manager smiled without listening. "Perfect. I'll be inside." By 9, the air was full of sound. The saws sliced through asphalt, throwing up a mist of black grit. The hydraulic hammer cracked the surface, and the ground shuddered with each strike. Igor maneuvered the excavator with slow precision, scooping up chunks of broken pavement. Each layer came away like pages from a book, first the asphalt, then gravel, then clay. The smell changed too, from dust to wet earth to something faintly chemical, like oil trapped underground for decades. Marina kept checking her readings. The pressure sensor on her monitor flickered oddly. "The density's off," she said, crouching near the trench. It's softer than expected. Sasha glanced at her over the noise. How soft? Soft enough to worry, he frowned. Could be the frost line. It's 38 degrees, she said. The frost line's fine. This feels like a cavity. But the clock was ticking, and the crew had already burned an hour double-checking old data. He didn't want to push back against the schedule. Last month, another foreman had been fired for delaying a city job. The paperwork, the fines, the overtime, it was all a chain around his neck. He told Igor to dig carefully, and the machine's bucket lowered again with a hiss. By noon, the trench was nearly 8 feet deep, and the workers had exposed a section of old piping, thick with rust and flaking paint. The pipe wasn't where it was supposed to be. It ran several feet off course, veering toward the southern corner of the lot. Marina took photos and measurements, shaking her head. "It's all wrong," she murmured. "The maps say it should run parallel to the lot line. This looks redirected, like someone rerouted it by hand." Sasha crouched beside her, running his glove over the corroded metal. The steel flaked off in his fingers. Maybe an old contractor took a shortcut. She looked unconvinced. They'd still file a record. The conversation was cut short by a groan, low and deep, like the sound of ice cracking on a frozen lake. The ground trembled. Igor froze mid-motion. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the asphalt near the edge of the trench began to ripple, sagging slightly before snapping downward with a violent crunch. "Back!" Sasha shouted, grabbing Marina's arm. She stumbled as a slab of pavement split open, sliding into the pit. Dust and dirt surged upward in a choking wave. The roar of collapsing ground swallowed every other sound. Igor slammed the controls, trying to swing the excavator back, but one of the machine's treads tilted sharply as the earth beneath it gave way. He jumped from the cab, landing hard on his shoulder, just as the edge crumbled further. The parking lot buckled like a torn sheet. A car parked near the cordon lurched and disappeared nose first into the opening. Alarms wailed. People screamed near the store entrance. Within minutes, the once stable surface was a jagged wound, a crater nearly 30 feet across, its side sloping into a dark, gaping hole. The air stank of diesel and wet clay. The ground kept shifting underfoot as if breathing. Sasha barked orders, rallying the crew to safety. One of the younger workers had twisted his ankle. Another was white-faced, repeating, "It just went down, it just went down," like a broken record. When the first emergency vehicles arrived, red lights flashed across the cracked asphalt. Firefighters unrolled ropes and barricades, shouting for onlookers to back away. The police strung yellow tape across the perimeter. Marina, still coughing from the dust, showed the city engineers the schematics, pointing out the section where the void had been marked. "It was here," she said hoarsely. "But the records, they're incomplete. It shouldn't have been this deep." "Could be a sewer collapse," one of them muttered. "Could be a sinkhole from a broken main." But as they set up the floodlights and lowered a probe camera into the chasm, the image on the monitor made everyone fall silent. The camera descended past layers of earth and stone until it found something impossible. A tunnel. Not a smooth, eroded cavity from water, but a constructed passageway, narrow and almost perfectly cut. Wooden beams supported the walls. Along one side ran a bundle of wires wrapped in dark insulation, too modern for the age of the old drainage system. Marina stared at the screen. "That's not city work." The engineer beside her nodded grimly. "Then whose is it?" The feed cut out suddenly static, then black. They'd lost signal about 60 feet down. By late afternoon, a crowd had gathered beyond the barriers. Reporters hovered at the edges, their microphones like vultures. The mayor's office sent an emergency response coordinator who asked a flurry of questions that no one could answer. All Sasha could do was stand near the rim, his hands trembling slightly. He kept looking at the hole as if expecting the earth to move again. "I told them about the void," Marina said beside him. Her voice was low, thick with guilt. "I wrote it in the report. They didn't check." He didn't respond. The truth was, they all hadn't checked enough. As the sun dipped behind the Walmart sign, the light turned the edges of the crater orange. A cold wind swept through, carrying the smell of metal and rain. Somewhere deep below, a faint echo came up from the dark, like the clang of something dropped against concrete. A rescue supervisor approached them, helmet lamp glinting. "We're sending a drone back in with a stronger transmitter," he said. "If the feed confirms what we think, we'll have to send a team down. Whatever's under there, it's not supposed to exist." Sasha and Marina exchanged a glance. The parking lot was silent now, except for the murmur of engines and the hum of the drone being readied. The accident had become something else. Something none of them were trained for. When the drone descended again, its camera swept through the darkness until it caught a glint of metal, a curved surface beneath a tangle of wires, and the faint outline of more beams receding into the earth. The tunnel stretched farther than anyone imagined, branching like veins through the soil. Marina felt the chill crawl up her spine. "Someone built this," she whispered. "Recently." And somewhere beneath the ground, that hidden network waited, silent and untouched, until the accident had woken it. The drone light flickered once more, then vanished into blackness. The crowd's murmurs faded as the evening air thickened. Sasha stood at the edge of the crater, staring down at the hollow void that had swallowed their day. He didn't know it yet, but the ground beneath their feet had cracked open, not only a sinkhole, but the first trace of a buried secret that would change everything. That night, the Walmart parking lot remained cordoned off, the floodlights buzzing faintly against the wind. Reporters left, sirens faded, and silence settled over the gaping wound in the earth. Deep below, beyond where the light could reach, the tunnel waited. Its walls lined with old wood and new wire, its air still humming with the faint vibration of machines that had stopped only hours before. And though no one yet understood it, the collapse was no accident of nature. It was the first warning of something human, deliberate, and dangerous lying just beneath the city's skin. The next morning, the official report would call it an unexplained structural failure. But for those who had been there, the foreman who had signed the work order, the engineer who had marked the void, and the young man who had jumped from the falling excavator, it would never again be just a job. The hollow had awakened, and it had swallowed more than asphalt. It had taken their peace with it. As the last generator shut down and darkness reclaimed the site, Marina stood a moment longer, staring into the pit. The wind brushed her hair across her face. She thought she saw movement below, a flicker of something metallic, but when she blinked, it was gone. She turned and walked away, unaware that this was only the beginning, that by uncovering what lay beneath, they had stumbled upon a secret that others had gone to great lengths to bury. And somewhere deep under the city, in the hidden veins of the earth, the tunnel stretched toward a place where no blueprint reached. The hollow was breathing again. The morning after the collapse came heavy with fog and the metallic taste of rain. The Walmart parking lot was still cordoned off by yellow tape and guarded by 2 patrol cars that blinked red in the gray light. Overnight, the news had spread through the city. Helicopters had hovered above the site, their floodlights sweeping over the crater like curious eyes. And by dawn, the story had already made it to every local channel. Sinkhole swallows, cars investigation underway. But what the headlines didn't know, what only a handful of people understood, was that the hole wasn't a natural one. It wasn't the work of water or time. It was something built, something deliberate. Sasha arrived first, his thermos of coffee half full, and his nerves already raw. He hadn't slept much. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the ground folding in on itself, heard the metal groan, the hiss of shifting soil, the sharp cry of the worker who'd twisted his ankle. It replayed over and over like a film loop that refused to stop. When he parked near the barricade, 2 men from the city's emergency engineering unit were already unloading gear from their truck. Rope coils, harnesses, oxygen tanks, portable lights. The air was thick with diesel fumes and unease. Marina stood by the command tent, hunched over a tablet, reviewing the footage from the night before. Her hair was tied back, her face pale, the dark circles under her eyes deep as bruises. The replay from the drone showed everything they had seen. The beams, the wires, the deliberate structure of the tunnel. She froze the frame where the camera had captured a glimpse of something metallic beyond the beams, a smooth surface that glimmered briefly before the feed cut out. "That's what I'm talking about," she said when Sasha approached. "That reflection, it's not stone or pipe. It's flat, like steel or concrete." Sasha rubbed his neck. "You think it's man-made?" She turned toward him, her voice low. "It has to be, and recent. Look at the beam work. Those cuts are clean. This isn't something abandoned decades ago." A rescue supervisor walked over, clipboard in hand. His name was Captain Hollis, a compact man with the calm of someone used to bad news. "We're going in," he said. "Half-hour descent, team of 4. We'll set anchors here, follow the original drone path, and document everything. You 2 can observe from the command feed." Marina nodded, though she wanted nothing more than to go down herself. "Be careful," she said quietly. The team suited up, methodically checking carabiners, tightening straps, clipping lights onto their helmets. They worked with the precision of climbers preparing for a mountain they couldn't see. When the first man leaned over the edge and descended into the mouth of the crater, the sound of his boots against the rock echoed hollowly upward. One by one, the others followed, disappearing into the darkness like divers into black water. The live feed flickered onto the monitor inside the tent. The camera attached to the lead rescuer's helmet showed a tunnel descending at a shallow angle, its walls reinforced by wooden planks and steel mesh. Dirt sifted down from the ceiling in slow drifts. The beams looked hand-cut, some still showing the marks of saw blades. Wires ran along the top, twisted together in makeshift bundles, leading deeper into the dark. "This wasn't done with city equipment," Marina murmured. "No," Hollis said. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." At 30 feet down, the team stopped to take samples. The microphone caught their breathing, slow and rhythmic, the click of tools against stone, the faint scrape of boots. They measured humidity, air quality, and structural stability. One of the rescuers muttered, "Smells like metal and old wood down here." At 50 feet, the tunnel leveled out into a narrow corridor. The walls changed, less natural soil, more cut rock and reinforced timber. A thin mist hung in the air, illuminated by their headlamps. As they advanced, the light glinted off something scattered on the ground, pieces of plastic tubing, a length of electrical wire, the broken handle of a shovel. Then came the voice over the radio. "Command, we've got signs of recent occupation. Repeat, recent. There's a generator down here. Looks used." The image shifted as the rescuer turned the camera. There it was, a small, portable generator, the kind used on construction sites. Nearby lay 2 oxygen tanks, a set of drills, and a box of industrial gloves. Everything was coated in a thin layer of dust, but nothing looked old. Marina leaned closer to the screen, her breath fogging the glass. "They left in a hurry," she said. Hollis didn't answer. He was staring at the timestamp on the side of one of the gas canisters. "That's from this year," he muttered. The team moved farther down. The tunnel widened, revealing a space large enough to stand upright. It was a kind of chamber, half natural, half carved, with makeshift workbenches built from plywood and scaffolding. On one of the benches lay a map, creased, dirty, but legible. The camera zoomed in, and Marina's heart jumped when she saw the markings. It wasn't a city plan. It was a section of downtown, with a thick red line drawn from the coordinates of the Walmart parking lot to the edge of another building, the First National Bank. "Are you seeing this?" the rescuer asked. "Yes," Hollis said sharply. "Do not touch anything. Keep moving." The camera turned again, capturing the far end of the chamber. There was a wall there, smooth, gray, and solid. The flashlight beam ran across it, revealing fine drill holes along one edge. Piles of concrete dust lay on the floor. Against the wall were stacked metal crates, unmarked, their lids secured with heavy clamps. "Looks like a barrier," said the voice over the radio. "It's not part of the tunnel, it's the end." Marina felt her stomach tighten. "That wall," she whispered. "It's not just any barrier. It's the outer foundation of the bank's vault." The realization hit all at once. The sinkhole hadn't uncovered an accident of geology. It had interrupted a crime in progress. "Command, we've got more here," came another voice. The camera swung down to the crates. The rescuer knelt, brushed away dust, and pried one open. For a moment, all they saw was darkness. Then the beam of light caught something inside rows of cylindrical objects, metallic, carefully wrapped in plastic and foam. The rescuer froze. "Jesus," he breathed. "That's explosives. Industrial grade." "Get out," Hollis ordered. "Now. Don't touch anything. Don't move anything. Backtrack your steps. Everyone out." The camera jolted as the team turned, their breathing loud and fast. The feed shook violently as they retraced their path, dirt falling in sheets from the ceiling. At one point, a support beam cracked with a groan, and the camera went black for a second, before flickering back to life. They made it to the surface 20 minutes later, covered in dust and sweat, their faces pale. The site transformed instantly from an engineering zone to a crime scene. Police cars, bomb disposal units, and federal vehicles arrived in a swarm. The Walmart sign flickered above them, absurdly bright in contrast to the grim scene below. The lot was sealed off completely. Even the manager, who had earlier demanded speed, now stood trembling near the curb, white-faced and silent. Inside the command tent, Marina sat numbly as agents in plain clothes reviewed the footage. Sasha stood beside her, his jaw set, his hands jammed into his jacket pockets. Neither spoke. The footage looped again and again, pausing on the crates, the wall, the red line on the map. "So it was a heist," Sasha said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "A sophisticated one," Marina replied. "They were going to come up through the vault." Hollis exhaled heavily. "The collapse must have scared them off. They probably cleared out hours before the ground gave way. Those vibrations from your excavation might have made the structure unstable." Sasha turned to him. "You're saying our mistake stopped them?" "Maybe," Hollis said. "If that section hadn't caved, they'd have blown the wall by morning." Outside, sirens wailed again as the bomb squad began extracting the crates one by one. The scene was surreal, dozens of men in protective suits moving across the cracked asphalt, the faint hum of a drone circling above, the smell of fuel and rain blending in the air. Reporters shouted questions from behind the barriers, their voices like distant thunder. By late afternoon, the FBI had taken control. A tall agent with a clipped accent and a badge clipped to his vest introduced himself as Special Agent Connors. He spoke quickly, efficiently, issuing orders as if he'd rehearsed them. "We need the schematics for this entire block," he told Marina. "Every pipe, every conduit, every access tunnel. We'll compare it with what they built." She nodded. "I have most of them, but there are gaps, old revisions that were never digitized." "Find them," he said. They knew where to dig. That means someone gave them the plans. By nightfall, floodlights bathed the crater in white light. The tunnel looked smaller from above now, a dark mouth sealed by shadow. But the knowledge of what lay beneath changed everything. It wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was proof that somewhere in the city, a group of people had spent months, maybe years, carving their way toward millions of dollars. Sasha sat on the back of his truck, staring at his boots. The guilt he'd carried since yesterday had twisted into something else now. A grim awareness that his mistake, his choice to keep digging despite the warning signs, might have prevented a disaster far worse. Yet it didn't feel like redemption. It felt like standing on the edge of something too large to comprehend. Marina joined him, her clipboard in hand. The light from the flood lamps made her face look even paler. "They're saying it was planned for this week," she said quietly. "Maybe even today. The heist. The explosives were ready. If the ground hadn't given out." He nodded slowly. "They'd have gone right through the vault wall." She looked at the crater, then at him. "You realize we were standing on top of all of it?" "Yeah," he said. "I realize that." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sound of radios crackled in the distance. Agents moved like shadows across the site, documenting every inch of the exposed tunnel. Somewhere in the city, phones were ringing, search warrants being signed, names being whispered. When Sasha finally stood to leave, he glanced back one last time. The wind had picked up, carrying dust and the faint hum of machinery from below. It was strange, he thought, how the ground beneath them, something so ordinary, could hide so much. And stranger still that it had taken a mistake, a human error, to expose what might have remained unseen forever. The floodlights flickered as he walked away, and for an instant, it seemed as if the darkness beneath the earth shifted again, breathing softly, waiting. The dome of soil that had hidden so much for so long had been broken open, and though the authorities would soon seal it and fill it, something in the city had already changed. Beneath the calm facades of buildings and the hum of everyday life, people were beginning to look down, to wonder what else lay underfoot. And far below, in the silence of the tunnel, beyond the reach of the floodlights, a single cable still glowed faintly with residual current. A wire left connected to a power source no one had found yet. The air stirred once more, and the hollow seemed to whisper back its secret, patient and unbroken. The city above slept uneasy, unaware that some plans, even when interrupted, never truly end. The following week unfolded like a fog that refused to lift. Rain fell on the Walmart parking lot every morning, turning the caution tape into drooping ribbons and the soil at the edge of the crater into slick, dark mud. What had begun as a repair job now resembled a small military operation. Tents lined the perimeter. Federal agents moved between them, carrying folders, photographing equipment, mapping every beam of the exposed tunnel. The yellow vests of the city workers had been replaced by black windbreakers with 3 white letters across the back. The air smelled of coffee, wet earth, and electricity from the generators that ran without pause. Sasha came back on Monday, though no one had asked him to. He stood at the chain-link fence, rain dripping from his jacket, watching as a bomb disposal team lowered a crate up from the depths with careful precision. Every move was slow, rehearsed, deliberate. There was a new kind of silence about the site. No shouting, no clanking machinery, just the soft hum of drones and the steady murmur of men who knew they were walking over something volatile. Marina spotted him from the command tent and walked out, her boots leaving shallow prints in the mud. She looked tired but composed, her hair tied neatly under her hard hat. "You shouldn't be here," she said, though her voice carried no reprimand, only weariness. "I couldn't stay home," he replied. Feels wrong, watching it all on the news. They're calling it the vault tunnel case, she said, glancing toward the reporters gathered beyond the barricades. Every channel has a theory. Some say it was a terrorist plot. Others say it was ex-military engineers. The truth is, no one knows who they were. He looked past her toward the open pit. But they were good at it. The best, she admitted quietly. Whoever built that tunnel wasn't guessing. They had blueprints, calculations, ventilation systems, everything. They knew how deep to go, how to avoid the city sensors. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from amateurs. The conversation was interrupted by a loud call from one of the federal teams. 2 men in protective suits were pulling something metallic from the debris, a large, rust-colored hatch that had been found half a mile away, hidden beneath an abandoned utility shed. A cluster of agents surrounded it as technicians began unscrewing the bolts. Marina and Sasha exchanged a glance, and without words, they both started walking toward it. The hatch opened with a hiss of stale air. Inside was a narrow shaft lined with concrete. A set of steel rungs descended into darkness. The shaft was dry, too clean to have been long abandoned. One of the agents shone his flashlight down and swore under his breath. It connects, he said. Same beam structure, same wiring. This is their entrance. The realization rippled through the group like static. The tunnel hadn't begun beneath the Walmart lot. It had begun here, in this forgotten corner of the city, hidden under a derelict shed that no one had inspected in years. Someone had spent months, maybe longer, digging through layers of soil and rock, inching their way toward the bank's vault without anyone noticing. "Start recording," said Special Agent Connors, his voice calm but tight. "Every inch of this gets documented. We're running the full sweep for prints, fibers, tool marks. No mistakes." For the next few hours, the scene became a blur of lights and motion. The shed's interior was gutted. Technicians scraped samples from the floor, photographed footprints in the dust, and cataloged every object left behind. A worn notebook, a few energy drink cans, a packet of batteries, and a portable radio tuned to a frequency that no one recognized. Everything was methodically labeled and sealed. Marina lingered near the entrance, scanning the edges of the shaft. There was something about the workmanship that disturbed her, not because it was careless, but because it wasn't. The walls were reinforced with precision, the welds clean, the bolts evenly spaced. This wasn't the work of desperate thieves. It was architectural. She ran her fingers along one of the metal supports and frowned. The steel was new. Sasha joined her. "You're thinking what I'm thinking," he said softly. "That they had funding." He nodded. "And access. You can't buy materials like this without leaving a trail. Someone with a company account, a contractor's license maybe. Someone who could order what they needed and not raise suspicion." She stared at the darkness below, the faint smell of oil and metal rising from it. "They built all this right under our feet," she said. "We drove over it, walked across it, and we never noticed." By evening, the FBI had sealed the hatch and set guards around it. Connors briefed the press with a measured tone, calling it an ongoing investigation into an organized criminal attempt. He didn't mention the explosives or the proximity to the vault. The words were careful, chosen to calm rather than inform. But beneath the politeness of his language lay an undercurrent of fear, the kind that seeps into a city quietly, through whispers and half-heard conversations. Sasha and Marina were taken in for extended questioning. In a windowless room inside the temporary field office, they sat across from Connors and another agent, who barely looked up from his notes. The questions came methodically. When did they start the excavation? Did they notice any unusual activity nearby? Had they seen anyone loitering before the collapse? Sasha answered each one with the same slow honesty. He admitted the warnings, the readings, the decision to continue digging. When they asked why, he hesitated. "We were under pressure," he said finally. "Deadlines. The store, the city, everyone wanted it done fast. I ignored the signs. If I'd stopped..." Connors leaned forward. "If you'd stopped, they might have succeeded. You realize that?" Sasha met his gaze. "Maybe. But that doesn't make what we did right." Marina spoke then, her voice steady but low. "He's right. We didn't prevent it because we were careful. We prevented it by accident. That doesn't make us heroes." The agent writing notes looked up for the first time. "Accidents save lives too," he said. "You both should remember that." When they were released, it was already dark. The rain had stopped, and the streets glistened under the amber glow of the lamps. Sasha walked her to her car in silence. Before she got in, she turned to him. "They'll find whoever did this," she said, but it sounded more like a question. "I'm not so sure," he replied. "People like that. They don't leave fingerprints." He was right. Days turned into weeks, and though the investigation sprawled across departments and databases, the fingerprints and DNA recovered from the site matched no one in any record. The tools were clean of serial numbers. The notebooks contained technical drawings but no names. Every clue led to another dead end. The city's newspapers began calling the perpetrators ghosts. And yet, beneath the surface, small discoveries continued to emerge. One morning, Marina was called back to review new footage from the secondary shaft. A drone had been sent deeper into the tunnel beyond the sealed vault wall. It had found another passage, a narrower one, freshly dug, leading away from the bank and curving toward the industrial district. But midway through its exploration, the feed cut off, just as before. The drone never returned. Connors was furious. "Someone still has access," he said during the debrief. "Someone's down there, or close to it. We'll find them." But as the days passed, the hole was filled, the ground leveled, and the story began to fade from the headlines. The city wanted normalcy again. The mayor announced the parking lot would be rebuilt within 6 months, as though burying the site under fresh asphalt would erase the memory of what had been found there. The reporters moved on to new stories. The public lost interest. Only the agents, the engineers, and those who had seen the tunnel with their own eyes knew that nothing about it was over. Marina left the department shortly after. The constant scrutiny, the press questions, the sleepless nights, it had all worn her down. She found work at a small private firm specializing in subsurface inspections, far from city politics and government contracts. Her office was quiet, her colleagues polite, and her projects small enough to control. Still, some nights she would wake before dawn, heart pounding, convinced she could hear the low hum of that generator again in her dreams. Sasha took a different path. The city offered him a consulting position on safety reforms, a way to turn guilt into something useful. He accepted, though the work felt hollow. He spent his days reviewing site procedures, drawing up new inspection standards, lecturing younger crews about the importance of diligence. Yet in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere beneath the city, the men who had dug that tunnel were still moving, still building, still waiting. One evening, months later, he stopped by the new construction site at Walmart. The crater was gone now, replaced by smooth asphalt and neat white lines. There was no sign of what had happened, no scar, no memory, just the faint difference in the color of the pavement where the soil had been replaced. He stood there for a long time, his breath clouding in the cold, listening to the faint hum of the streetlights. Marina found him there unexpectedly. She had been driving home from a nearby project when she saw him standing alone under the lights. She parked and walked over, her footsteps soft on the wet pavement. "You still come here," she said. "Sometimes," he replied, "to remind myself it was real." They stood together, looking out across the empty lot. For a while, neither spoke. Then Marina said, "Do you ever think they'll find them?" Sasha shook his head. "No, people like that don't get found. They just start again somewhere else." She nodded, her expression unreadable. "I think you're right." The wind picked up, carrying a faint metallic scent from the nearby drains. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Marina pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. "Let's go," she said softly. "It's getting cold." As they walked away, a streetlight flickered above them. The new pavement, dark and clean, gleamed under the rain, but at the far edge of the lot, near the line where the new concrete met the old, a thin crack had begun to form. It was small, barely visible, but it traced a straight line toward the storm drain, where the water ran deep and unseen. And down below, past the layers of soil and concrete and forgotten fears, in the last uncollapsed section of the old tunnel, something shifted. A drop of water fell from the ceiling and struck metal. The sound echoed once, twice, and then faded. In that silence, a cable light flickered weakly to life. The city above slept, its lights bright and its streets clean. But under the surface, the dark still remembered. The hollow had not been filled completely, only covered. And though the men who built it were gone, their path remained a trace in the dark, waiting for footsteps that would one day return. If you liked this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Watch more stories on the channel and share this video with someone who'd love it too.